Welcome back to my channel. My name is Coty. If you're new here, welcome and thank you for joining me. So today I'm really excited. I want to share with you 4 of my favorite books that I've read so far this year. So with quarantine starting in March, I've had lots of time to dedicate to reading, and so I've really done just that. I feel like reading is one of my favorite hobbies. I don't know, can you have a favorite hobby? I don't know, but it's probably one of my oldest hobbies. I've definitely enjoyed reading ever since I was little. Ever since I can remember, honestly, I've really enjoyed reading. So there's nothing like a good book that can just get your attention and you just melt away from like the real world, the real reality, and you're sucked into someone else's reality. There's just something that's just so incredible about it to me. Yeah, so I'm really excited to share these 4 books with you. If you like this video, be sure to hit the like button at the end and definitely consider subscribing to my channel. Also, if you guys have any book recommendations, definitely leave those in the comment box below because I'm always looking for good new books. So you'll see from the ones that I share like what type of book that I really enjoy because they're all pretty similar. So yeah, let's get right into it. Okay, so the first book that I want to share with you is Elizabeth Gilbert's City of Girls. So let me just start with saying that I absolutely adore Elizabeth Gilbert. Her Signature of All Things is probably one of my favorite books of all time. It's really beautiful. So yeah, if you are interested in this book and you read it and you love it, definitely check out some of her other ones. She's one of my favorite authors. But City of Girls, okay, so such a good book. It was so just fun and like sexy, right? So it's about a girl, her name is Vivian. She is kicked out of college because she doesn't go to class, which I can relate to. So she's kicked out of college and her family sends her to live with her aunt in Manhattan in New York City in the 1940s, and this is when this was set, in the 1940s. And her aunt is actually, she owns a theater, and so Vivian becomes immersed in this whole lifestyle of showgirls and theater and glamour and alcohol and drugs, and so she just becomes consumed by it almost. She starts working for her Aunt Peg as the seamstress for all of the shows that she puts on, and she becomes friends with the showgirls, and they just show her a whole new, exciting, glamorous, raunchy world. And so Vivian is young and naive. She's only 19 years old, and so she gets caught up in a public scandal while she's there in New York, and so she leaves. And the second part of the book is actually, you learn that the narrator, or the person's point of view that the book is written through, is actually Vivian decades later when she's in her 80s. And so she talks about revelations that she's had and how that time in New York basically sculpted her life, and how she was made to, meet herself and work through those things. And so it's fun and it's sexy, but it's also so wise. And so it's very long, like you can see, like it's super long, but it's one of those books that just, after the first chapter, you're just like, give me more of this. So that is why I picked this one as my number 1. I know that some people have different reviews on this book and have different thoughts of Elizabeth Gilbert, but I love her so much. And so if that sounds interesting to you, definitely check this book out. It's so good. It's the perfect summer read. So the second book is also by an author that, in my opinion, can do no wrong. I love everything that I've read that he does. So that is, I'm sure that I'm gonna butcher his name because I'm not really sure how to pronounce it, but it's Paulo Coelho. And so he is the author that wrote The Alchemist, which is another one of my favorite books of all time. So I've read a lot of his books, actually. I really recommend all of them if you want to read something that is light but so impactful. He is just incredible. Like, he's so good. I don't know how he does it. But yeah, so I've read The Witch of Portobello, Aleph, 11 Minutes, and of course The Alchemist, and now Brida, I think is how you pronounce it. So Brida is about a young girl in Ireland who is on a spiritual quest. She calls it wanting to learn magic. But ultimately it's a quest for spiritual knowledge, ultimately, is what she's after. And along her path to finding or to learning this magic, she calls it, she meets two teachers. One is a man named Magus, and the other is a lady named Wicca. And they both teach her different aspects of sort of the same thing. So Magus kind of teaches her like the goodness of the outer world, right? And Wicca teaches her how to dance to the rhythm of the world and to trust herself. It's a really light read, but it's really interesting to go with her on this journey, kind of. There's a quote from the book that definitely is just the underlying theme of this book, and it's the process of finding ourselves is called love, and that is exactly what this book is about. So it's basically the story of Britta trying to balance the knowledge that she gains and becoming a witch with personal relationships and her reality. And it's a quick and easy story, but it's pretty impactful. I would say that it's learning oneself and learning to trust yourself and trust in the universe. And I think that's exactly what this book is about. And I think that is exactly what the whole world needs right now. And I think that's what everyone's learning, especially like through this time in the world. So reading something like this it just gives you a whole new lens to look through. And so I highly suggest this book. And if you like this book, I definitely suggest anything else that he has put out, because all 5 that I've read so far have been just perfection. Okay, holy smokes on this next book. I'm sure that you've all seen it all over news headlines or all over your Instagram, because this book is having a moment and it deserves to have a moment. It's such a good book, and I highly recommend that any woman or even man picks this book up and just dives right in, because it's good. So this book is Untamed by Glennon Doyle, and it's gold. It is basically a memoir of the second phase of Glennon's life. Essentially, she covers topics that sort of pertain to the thought of women being caged by the patriarchy, almost. And so she covers topics from like hating other women, like internalizing misogyny. She also covers topics from homophobia, religious views. She talks about overcoming her eating disorder, and she also talks about alcoholism. And this book is just, it will challenge your point of view, and it will open your eyes to just so many other things. It's so freaking good. So Glennon, after years of being married to her husband and her children's father, she leaves him for a woman. And so she really has to question her own faith and her own religious views and, you know, everything that she has ever believed up until that point. And so it's just a really candid account of her life, and it's incredible. God, it's so good. So she's a philanthropist, she's a writer and a women's rights advocate. So she even talks about like really complex like ideas that are so prevalent right now in the world, and this book was written before everything happened. This year, she talks about race and privilege, and she is gold. Oh my goodness. Ultimately, this is another book that the underlying theme is trusting yourself, like listening to you, listening to your heart and following that. It's very profound, it's emotional, it's empowering, it's candid, it's just, she did a really brilliant job writing this book. So I think that all of the hype is real, and all of the hype is real for a reason. So if you're looking to up your femme game, this is the one. Okay, so the last book that I read during quarantine that I just absolutely would recommend to anyone is Educated by Tara Westover. And so this is also a memoir. Sorry, there are sirens. I'm gonna have to keep the windows open because Hawaii doesn't have air conditioning. So this is a memoir about a girl who grew up in rural Idaho to a family of survivalists who did not believe in government or education or the medical system in America. And so she didn't even have a birth certificate. So it's pretty wild. They were prepping for the end of the world, essentially, and that's all she knew up until the age of 17, when her older brother got into college and left home. And so that basically expanded her mind to the possibility that she too could go to college and change her life. And so that's exactly what she did. She self-taught herself. She taught herself math and grammar, and she passed the ACT and got into college at age 17 without ever having stepped foot into a classroom. And she wasn't homeschooled either by anyone in her family. And so it's pretty incredible that she got herself into college, never having learned anything, never having a real education. And so once she got a taste of what school and knowledge and learning was, she ran with it. She got into Harvard and then ultimately to Cambridge. And so it is just a beautiful story of her life and overcoming every obstacle that you could probably think of. And it also follows her relationship with her family after leaving and deciding to learn and go to school and to be something different. And that really strained her family relationship to the point where it ultimately completely severed it. And so the book is a story of how when you know better, you do better, and how education, having the knowledge of something, can completely shift your perspective. She ultimately learns that, you know, by studying psychology, that her father actually had bipolar disorder, and just how you can look at things so differently when you're educated on those things. And it's just, gosh almighty, this is a very motivating book. Like, after you read this, you feel like you can take on the whole world. So that is why I highly recommend that one. Trigger warning though, there is a bit of abuse against women in this book. So if that triggers you, just, you know, prepare. But if you can get past that, like, it's a really beautiful book. Actually, I don't know if this is her first book or not, but I would be curious and interested to read her other things. So yeah, those are the 4 books that just have really stood out to me during this year even. I've read many more, but those were the 4 that they really did it for me. So if you guys have any recommendations, now that you know the types of books that I like to read, definitely let me know, because I need a good new one. I'm not really into the book that I'm reading right now, so I'm on the hunt for something. I have a couple on my list, but we'll see. But I love hearing what you guys have to say too. Yeah, so if you liked this video, definitely let me know by hitting the like button at the bottom. So I'll see you guys again on Friday.